Thank you, everybody, for joining us today for our fireside chat. We don't have a fire plane. We thought about it. We did decide to do this because we thought it would be interesting to do a couple different perspectives. And I found this guy out on the street. Seemed like a good guy to bring in and kind of talk a little bit about our perspective. So if you haven't heard me in the 17 things I've been in today, I'm Amanda Fennell at Relativity, Chief Security Officer. And I'll be doing a perspective as a Relativity 1 CISO about cloud. If you want to introduce yourself.
Yes, good afternoon. I was just happened to be walking down the street and bumped into Amanda.
Paid him $50 USD.
We said 100. 50 now, 50 later. We'll talk later.
Yeah.
My name's Stephen Babb. I'm Global Head of Security for a company called Murray Global. We're a partner with Relativity.
And what we're going to do is kind of an interview style. We've talked about different things that we thought would be debatable, make us fight each other in front of you guys. It'll be a one-on-one match, cage match. But I'll let you kick off if you'd like.
Cool, thank you. And can I say it's a real pleasure to be sharing this
now we're being nice.
Virtual fireside with you today.
Thank you.
Let's start off with a few light-hearted things. Firstly, could you just give us some background on you, how you made your journey through to Relativity?
This is now going to start to sound boring if I say it too many times. This is like the third time I've been asked today. So I started as an archaeologist and decided to move into the security realm because I did forensics on human remains. I specialized in paleohominid biology, like everybody does, and just decided to move into something that was much more of a secure job, literally. And I got paid better. There's actually not a whole lot of paid archaeologists that specialize in that. So I moved into the role by starting a master's program for digital forensics, and then I got recruited by Guidance Software, NCASE, the first 6 months. And at the time I said, I don't know a whole lot about forensics, and their response was, it's fine, we'll teach you. We just need people who have more formal education. There were a lot of people who had hands-on work and experience in forensics and e-discovery, but not a lot of people who were getting formal education. That was the beginning. From there, I just bumped around to a lot of like 3-letter agencies as a government contractor with Booz Allen, worked with all of the NSA and everybody else, and so that's why when I say our security is pretty top-notch, it's because I've been in some of those places. And Symantec was also a big one. I was there for 5 years. Did a lot of managed security for Fortune 50 and learned a lot of lessons in that one. And eventually maneuvered to Zurich and then now here at Relativity.
Cool.
What about you?
It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you.
Not quite as interesting. So at 16, I remember it well. I was at an event learning how to become an accountant. And hopefully there's no accountants in the room today. If they are, my apologies. I decided to pursue a career in technology instead. So started life working for an international brewer. The side benefits of working for a brewery were fantastic. The accounting theme then came back into play. I went to university and joined KPMG, joined their graduate program, working for their computer audit and security group, as it was called at the time. It then changed its name to their information risk management team. It had various name changes after that point as well. Thought I'd sign up for 5 years. I was there for 15. Didn't quite leave when I was expecting to, but in terms of opportunity, it was fantastic. It gave me the opportunity to work in so many different sectors, different industries, and see security through many different lenses in terms of your big global corporates through to central government, local government, but also smaller managed businesses as well. So great opportunity. I left KPMG. Before I left, I led their technology risk service line for the UK. Left to join a client called Betfair, who some of you may have heard, leading their technology risk and compliance team. Was there for just over 2 years, and then joined another old client of mine called Vodafone, performing a similar security leadership role in Vodafone, before joining what was Clutch Group in July 2016. May last year, Clutch Group merged with a company called Murray Legal, We were both providing similar services, e-discovery, managed review, legal consulting and solutions. We came together in May last year to form Murray Global, and hence being here today.
Awesome.
So why Relativity?
I get that a lot too. That's a good question, though. So I know that when I transferred around in my career at different times, it was because I went to a place that was going to teach me the most, an area that I needed to expand and kind of have that, what do they refer to them as, stretch assignments kind of thing?
Yeah.
So like when I went to Semantic, it was because I was great at dead forensics, but really wanted to lock down the network monitoring live forensic side. And after 5 years, I was like, okay, done, good with that. So Relativity came about in discussion. First of all, Andrew is very charismatic. So after a few conversations, I was like, this sounds like this could be a lot of fun. It's not very often that you have a CEO who actually understands the importance of security. Like, I actually don't think I've ever worked for a CEO that really got it. So that was compelling. The second thing is, in some of my initial discussions, I was talking to a few people and I realized that I was talking to people who were smarter than me. And that's not, this is gonna sound bad, but it's not that common. In security, a lot of times, people you're talking to, they don't actually get security.
Yeah.
But these were people that, when we were talking about signatures, I was like, yeah, this is awesome. This is something where I could really dig in, just really sink my teeth into it, and really do something different, where we wrap this cyber security around a really awesome product security team. Relativity was already good at product security. They have all this established, and all we've done now is just build that out more.
Yeah.
But then we've done this wraparound with cybersecurity that's just unheard of for a product company.
Okay, cool, thank you. Before we get into some of the detail about Relativity 1, keen to get a humorous story from you that may have a security context, just to prove that we're both human.
That we're human.
Yes.
So, I mean, I guess if it's like a recent actual security incident, actually, it was a real security incident. I have a feeling yours will be more humorous. You're a funny guy. So, in an incident, we had this very large one at a company in about the past couple years that I was at, and it was a huge incident. We had 30 people working it 24/7, round the clock. We were convinced that we had an insider threat in Taiwan, and they were exfiltrating data from the financial industry. And we were just trying to hunt this down as much as we could. And over time, we started to piece together some of the profile of exactly how much data was being exfiltrated consistently at the same time. And we were able to eventually match up the user and so on. And after so much of the logging and collecting all this, putting it all together, it turned out that it was an administrator that was backing up his album of Michael Jackson's Thriller. And I was like, I can't blame you, man. This is a good thing to do. But yeah, it's just one of those things when you get to an incident moment that you just are like, all of this for that. All right.
So an incident, I guess there was lots of Coke and pizza.
Mountain Dew, Diet Mountain Dew, and Pop-Tarts. That's accurate. Yeah. Still the same, but
yes.
Do you have a better story? This is good.
This is embarrassing, but I'm happy to share. Hopefully it's quite humorous as well. Murray Global, we have ISO 27001 certification globally. And we were up for recertification back end of last year. The first site that was being visited was our operations over in Bangalore. So we had the audit scheduled, which I think was originally going to be around the end of July. So I booked my flights, I made sure my visa was up to date. And for various reasons with the auditor we were using, we had to push back the schedule. So I just changed my flights. I got on a flight, I got to Heathrow to get on a plane, was subject to a visa check before I boarded, which I passed. I got on the plane. It was probably 11 hours to Bangalore. I arrived in Bangalore around 5 a.m. on a Monday morning. The audit was starting on the Tuesday. And got to customs and said, I'm sorry, Mr. Babb, but you're not coming into the country. It was like, I'm already here. You know, what's the problem? They said, your visa expired 2 weeks ago. So no matter how much negotiation I attempted, they said, I'm sorry, you are not coming into the country. I was in the airport for less than 2 hours. I was accompanied by a security guard during that time.
The entourage.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I wish.
Yeah.
And to the point that the security guard waited at the plane door to make sure that I had got on the plane.
You're a suspicious character.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. So, bizarrely, the flight that I flew back onto Heathrow was exactly the same plane that I'd flown out on. So my claim to fame from that is having 2 BA breakfasts within 24 hours.
That's awesome. But so confidentiality and integrity and authentication.
Integrity completely gone out the window at that point. So in 24 hours, I was on a plane for nearly 22. And my boss at the time is in the room, and I phoned Jeff up on my way back from the airport and, very embarrassed, said to Jeff what had happened. And I remember his words after he'd stopped laughing. It was, Stephen, if somebody as conscientious as you can make this mistake, there's no hope for any of us. So a kind of backhanded compliment, so to speak.
That is a nice compliment.
Yes, yes. One that my team are still reminding me of, and there's various colleagues in the audience who probably weren't aware of that story, but I'm sure I will get some stick for it nonetheless. So, thank you. So, on to the important, possibly, subjects. In terms of cloud, when did you first come across cloud, and what did it mean for you at that time?
Oh, man. So, I don't want to date myself, right? But let's start with the problem. You know, when I was younger, like a kid, and I heard of, at some point, like the term serial killers, right? When I heard that term, I thought that meant somebody killed someone and then sat down and ate cereal, right? I was like 8, okay? I don't know why I had heard of the serial killers. And so there's a juxtaposition that happens in my head at times when it was coming to learning things. When I was in my mid-20s and I was in that master's program, we get to a thing, and I don't know if they have in the UK, like comps, like comprehensives, at the end of your master's program. And at the end of it, we had a series of accumulations of previous years that had gathered important information that they were lovingly enough to pass on, shall we say. But it was a lot of information in a file. So we were exchanging it. It's not cheating. We were just prepping for these comprehensives with the topics. But there are a lot of details in it. So we were trying to move this file around, and it was rather large, and so we were trying to email it to people. And it got denied going through Gmail. Was it like 25 megs or whatever? And it prompted me and said, do you want to add this to your Google Drive cloud? And at the time, I was like, what is a cloud? I don't understand. Like, I don't want to give it over to somebody I don't know. Is the cloud somebody hanging out there? And who is this cloud? It was like the Pirates of Silicon Valley. Like, what is this Windows that you're speaking of? And so I didn't do it at the time. And eventually I had to. My colleagues that we were working on this project, they're like, no, you have to do it. It's totally legit. It's safe. I know this guy Cloud. Okay. So we eventually used it for this exchange of information, and that was kind of the beginning in my mid-20s of having heard of it. At Symantec is when it became real as security. So that was when it developed into actually understanding the full capacity of what it is, how it's affected. But I think it's important to note that in my mid-20s, I have the same reaction that a lot of people have to the cloud. What is this? I don't trust this. I don't know what this is. So it's pretty much the same as everybody, probably.
Cool. So moving forward that 5 years from college, that's another $50, I think, later on. Clearly, much has changed in the cloud industry. Your career has gone on from strength to strength. You're now Chief Security Officer with Relativity. What have you done and what are you doing internally to really support Relativity One and the business model required to deliver a secure, scalable cloud solution?
Well, a lot of it we've spoken with in a few different sessions today, but I'll emphasize, if you guys haven't been any of them, specifically the security session, which was really awesome. I think that what we bring in is a preventative focus. So we contextualize everything with intel, with understanding what's coming at us and getting ahead of it. We contextualize everything with vulnerabilities, with understanding them and getting them earlier. So our business model for security, we have in the military, we call it target operating model. Target operating model shifted. So originally we had a security team that was product security. So we came in and we developed this together to maneuver it around that we have product security, cybersecurity, which will integrate its services into product and feed it that intel so that it can say, you should be concerned about these vulnerabilities. These are adversaries coming after these kind of attacks right now and exploiting the code with these different methodologies. So be concerned, be very afraid. That information gets handed over, that integrates in there. And then our compliance, we have as our third group as well, that kind of gives us the governance there. So our target operating model changed and shifted, and we're working through the integrations now of all of these teams, making sure that we kind of, like vulnerability management, right? That means two very different things to a cyber person and a product person, but we're merging those. So each one of these requires a lot of ITIL build out. What does the process look like? And we're going through all of those right now.
Sounds like process is really important then too.
When is it not, right? I mean, it's one of those things, and I've said this at one point whenever I had an escalation of something that occurred, but somebody had said, well, the person forgot to do blah, blah, blah. And I said, it's never a person. It's never a human being that made a mistake. It's our mistake for not having the right process in place. Let's go back to that and fix that.
Okay, a really interesting point about process. I think we can all relate to that point, definitely. Let's move on to some of the challenges then in terms of Relativity 1 adoption. Specifically, can you just talk through some of those and how those have now been addressed?
Well, I think the first one will be obvious, but trust is the first thing we have to work out, which is ironically the name of security, that we're dealing with here at Relativity. But that's the reason that we want it to be synonymous, is because the first thing you have to step through with this challenge is trust. People have to trust that we're doing security the best way possible, and we have all of the governance behind it that's required, that process that's required. So much so that why would you want to do that internally? Whenever you have this intel group that is using all these best in breed different technologies and contextualizing all of this and building out those signatures. So trust is probably the first one. Migration was a challenge, actually. Migration for people who are moving from on-prem and then moving over into the cloud. But our way to overcome that was to kind of deploy a migration specialist team and really deal with all those different things to help ease that and make it a really seamless transition for people. If you're making a note, that I'll help you do it anytime, migration, it's good. The third one is probably like applications and extensions, making sure that we work with all of our partners and work with all of our customers, make sure that they get the same functionality that they need in the cloud that they have in the SaaS, or that they have in the on-prem.
Yeah, okay. And we talked about encryption as well.
Yeah, so anytime you have a cloud product, people need to feel that there's security there. And the only way to really focus on security with cloud is encryption. And we kind of broke this out in the security session that we had, the adversary chain, that everything you go through, you have to go through 6 different levels of defense in depth that we have in place many times over. But at the end of the day, if you got through all of that, first of all, you're amazing. But the last end that you have is encryption. And everyone needs to know that their data is encrypted at rest and in transit from A to Z, that it's encrypted, somebody can't break it open. And that's what we have. We have SSC, we have Azure has their data at rest, data in transit is already encrypted, so we have those protections in place, but it's one of the only ways that people can feel that trust of my data is not going to be looked at by anybody else. It can't be sniffed, it can't be looked at.
Okay. I think you now have some questions for me.
I do.
I
now you're
thought
in the
I was
hot
going to
seat.
get away scot-free, but sadly not.
No. I guess I found just some of these kind of questions I was just curious to know your answer to, but for you, why did you entertain the cloud as an option for business, I guess?
Good question. Just recapping on some of my time at KPMG, a lot of the work that we were doing was consulting with organizations who were looking to adopt cloud for certain services. And certainly 10 years ago, Many of our clients would not entertain storing any personal or sensitive or confidential information in the cloud. A lot of the providers were small startups. Their focus was on providing a service, not necessarily a secure service. The market has changed. There's been loads of consolidation. There's now a handful of key global cloud providers. And who would have thought 10 years ago that we'd be saying that Microsoft is one of the global cloud providers? I certainly couldn't see that coming 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But they certainly are. So really, it's that consolidation, it's that shift in the market, and that recognition from the cloud providers that if they are to continue to focus on the enterprise market, they have to do security at least as good as, if not better, than a typical enterprise client can do today.
You know, and it's interesting that you mentioned the Microsoft, but one of the things that we had to measure when we made a determination with who we would go with to trust their security posture, and one of the things we looked at is that Microsoft is about 20 years now. It's been the second most attacked after the State Department from the US, the second most attacked entity out there. So their pure telemetry of what's constantly coming at them that they can contextualize about threats and adversaries out there for the SaaS, I'm on it. I'd love to take advantage of it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the significant investment that Microsoft and others are making in this.
It's
in
$1
this
billion
product.
a year. Like, I think, is Microsoft in here? I got paid for that? No, just kidding. It's $1 billion a year, and I have a great budget. But Andrew's not going to give me $1 billion unless he's in here and I can coerce him. But yeah, it's $1 billion a year. So why not lift and shift that a little bit? But yeah.
Equally, I've got a pretty good budget, but no way near that at all.
Yeah.
So there's obviously been consolidation. Going back to the trust point is equally important. And by trust, I'm looking at security, privacy, but also compliance. That is critical. As we've said, Microsoft investing roughly $1 billion a year in security. The scale, the complexity of what they're doing is so significant. You can never guarantee 100% security, and I challenge anybody who would say that that is the case. But when you're investing those sort of sums, you've got end-to-end encryption, encryption at rest, encryption in transit. It is extremely secure. So
that's your biggest hurdle with moving to cloud?
Yes,
trust.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it feels like that's the common theme.
Equally, from a business model perspective, many of our clients now have adopted a cloud-first strategy. So equally, we are preparing ourselves to make sure that we're not just keeping up with the Joneses, but we're actually staying ahead. We are offering a product that our clients are looking for. It's not going to be for every client. Some clients work in specialist areas, governments, for example, where they will never adopt a cloud strategy. But many do. So we're preparing ourselves to make sure we can respond positively to the market. Equally, it gives us a great opportunity to open up delivery of e-discovery services to segments of the market that we may not have seen as a target previously. So that could be smaller organisations, it could be working with law firms who historically may have seen that an e-discovery provider such as ourselves was too complex and too expensive. So there's scalability, there's flexibility to allow us to operate there, which is a big advantage for us as a business.
Yeah.
On the back of that, and we certainly were the first partner to sign up for Relativity One in the UK, and one of the first in the
launch.
US.
Yeah.
Yes, if not the first.
We appreciate it.
My pleasure. We've developed a new product, Clutch Cumulus, which is wrapping some of our traditional e-discovery and managed review services around the Relativity One product. So we're taking your core product and wrapping some of our stuff around it as well. So for us, it really meets the best of both worlds. A very secure product with all the services that we would be traditionally offering to large enterprise clients.
How else has your strategy changed then in your business? I mean, is this the main focus then? Because it feels like you've definitely made your direction. The eye of Sauron has turned to this.
We are still offering and certainly will continue to offer on-premise. It's not a case of one or the other. Our business model is absolutely both. There will always be clients that require on-premise. There's some greater flexibility in terms of workflows, integration with other tools that we can deliver with on-premise today, which we can't do with Relativity One.
And
over time, that position may change, but our business strategy is offering both products.
And our security posture doesn't change for us either for the hybrid model. It's the same, So it's still authentication, everything that we have in place, it's the same. So while obviously there's a lot of investment going to cloud, that doesn't negate the fact that, like you said, there will always be some people who need to use on-prem.
Yeah.
It's just a reality. You have to accommodate.
I mean, the difference in security posture is it's more about collaboration. We've started conversations pretty much the week that you joined Relativity. So a lot of our security capability... Not
outside? That wasn't our first conversation? That's why.
Oops, sorry, I let that
Yeah.
A lot of our security is now driven and supported by the work that you're doing as Relativity, but also the work that's being done with Microsoft as well. So I see it as enhancing our capability.
I agree with it. So should we go to the buzzwords of GDPR?
24 days to go.
Is that it?
Yes.
Is it tattooed on your hand?
I don't know about you and how much visibility you see this over the other side of the water, but the number of emails and the number of calls I get from software solution providers that say, we can solve your GDPR problem with our specific software product. Yeah.
So in security, we get the same thing after every major breach or every major attack that's out there. So like after anything that takes place, like CCleaner, whenever that came out, or Spectre, when that came out in January, it's a flood of emails that thankfully we have the ability to just send to spam if it uses a certain word or algorithm, but it's, I can solve all of your problems with CCleaner or Spectre or what have you, and you're like, insert here, but yeah. And then GDPR, there were a lot of it, and we've always had a lot of questions about it, and it's fascinating because I guess we just have to continue to reiterate it before it comes across solidly that we have resolved. Everyone goes through their phases of understanding their remediation steps, putting in any of the controls that they need to for access requests or destruction of data, et cetera. And all of those, for the record, for Relativity 1, we have all of those in compliance. So we're in the framework by May 25th, I assume.
And equally from Mirai Global as well. There's been lots of debate, there's been lots of noise in the press, not just the technology press, legal press as well, and the sort of general newspapers around how big a thing GDPR is. And I don't want to mute it at all. Focusing on privacy is critical, it's really important. But certainly for us who have been European-based for most of their lives, we've had data protection regulation for years. One of the first things I did with KPMG was help develop their data protection service back in, show my age now, 1996. So it's commonplace for a lot of organizations. GDPR, yes, is making a big difference. I think it's there for the right reasons, most definitely. But it's not a revolution. It's just evolving policy that has been there for a number of years. It's taking it a step further, most definitely. But it's not the big revolution that a lot of people are making out.
You bring up a good point. I mean, you work in the industry long enough, and data privacy is a strong encouragement at all times. It's something we're always focused on. And it was fascinating to come from a Swiss-based insurance company, which we're a little risk-averse over there, and then go to Relativity. And they're so protective here at Relativity. We're so protective about the code, about the product, about the way we're handling our data. And I was like, wow, this is like being at a Swiss-based insurance company, a little bit, but it's very much the same dynamic, a lot of controls in place for that. So, well, I do have a question. I'm going to throw this one on you here, but what advice do you want to give people who are starting down the journey to cloud? This is something that some people are finally, 5 years ago, we'd have gotten laughed out of the room, right?
Yeah.
No cloud. So
Yeah.
some people are still thinking about it, and they're thinking, okay, we're going to have to do it. What advice do you want to say?
Firstly, get the right people around the table. Understand who your key stakeholders need to be to allow you to really make that initial assessment as to whether cloud is the right choice for you. You know, as we've discussed, for some businesses it absolutely will be, and they already have a cloud-first strategy. For some, it may not be. So get those stakeholders around the table, have that sensible conversation, and agree whether this is right for your business.
Did you have to argue with anybody when you first moved in the cloud direction?
No, there was some conversations that wasn't arguing, it was really asking some of the questions that I'm sure our clients are asking is, how secure is it? Can people access data that they shouldn't do, et cetera, et cetera. So it was having the same conversations that we are having with some of our clients, and we will continue to have with clients and prospective clients moving forwards. But I welcome those questions because it shows a level of understanding and a level of care around what we're looking to do. So that would be my first point.
Yeah.
I mentioned that the cloud industry has changed certainly over the past 5 years. Forrester released a report on enterprise transformation in November last year, and I quote, "Cloud is truly business critical and is now a mainstream enterprise core technology." So, you know, a major global research firm is putting their weight behind what we're seeing in the industry. That cloud is definitely the way to go. Certainly don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah, I was going to say, since you mentioned the terminology, welcome questions. I think we should welcome some, especially if there is anybody who's struggling with this topic right now. Any specific questions anyone has about cloud? Or about going and messing up your visa? Just in case. Microphone. Thanks.
Where's your cloud located?
Okay, so we, or me, or
Both.
both? Okay. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, our cloud is your cloud.
So there we go. Hand up. So we have a few locations, US, UK, but we try to take advantage of Hong Kong as well. We take advantage of also the fact that Azure has 72 different locations around the world. So our build out will continue to go there. There's 2 locations in the US, mid and east, that we base out of, and then the UK, 2. But any other ones? Product security director. So yeah, we take advantage of this guy. He literally is my encryption specialist for everything. If anyone was in the security session, this guy's awesome. Yes? Oh.
What's the rollout plan with Brexit moving? There's obviously some places might not want to list their data in the UK anymore.
I actually haven't had any issues with any clients that have gone in that direction. And we still have our clients that are going through hosting through the UK. I haven't had any concerns that have come from clients on any questions that I've had. Have you?
Not to date.
Not to date. Yeah.
I'm sure there may some questions.
Now that you've put it in their head. No, but no, I have.
It's a question I've been asked by,
Yeah.
obviously it's not tier 1 banks, but
Yeah.
they just use on-prem stuff, even though that's changing as you've said.
Yeah.
But I have been asked that question, not specifically to Relativity 1.
Right.
It's like,
What are the concerns they have with it?
well, I mean, if you look at Switzerland and Germany, they don't allow any data outside of those countries specifically, so when you talk about cloud, cloud has to be in those countries.
Any identifying data, but yeah. Which everyone has their version of what they consider identifying data. In Germany, I think an IP is an identification, but yeah. So normally our way around that is our build out. I don't want to say way around it. The reality and the path forward for any of those kind of complications are that you have to have local to that area. So future ideas are for us to build out perchance in Germany to have an instance that would be there. And obviously Switzerland would be ideal so that we could get Zurich to get into Relativity. But yeah, I think it's the only answer whenever you have those kind of complications.
I think just to add to that as well, if The position on Brexit is obviously still under negotiation, and specifically what will or will not be included in that final deal is still being clarified. One thing that the UK government has already committed to in relation to GDPR is to adopt and enforce GDPR from the 25th of May, 24 days to go if none of you are already aware. So certainly the UK will be adopting GDPR fully from that time.
All right.
I know there was a...
We do, yeah.
Is Microsoft going to give all of our data to the government?
Is Microsoft gonna-
Microsoft, who has all the data, are they
Yeah.
going to give it to the government? It's a softball question.
Yeah, it's a fun one. Yeah, and I actually had an interesting discussion with someone yesterday who was concerned about like the Patriot Act and like we as a U.S.-based software company would hand over data to the government if they ask for a request. It's not necessarily how the Patriot Act works. Having been a part of people who had to do those subpoenas, it actually requires a subpoena, and I think like Apple and Google are really well known for combating those whenever the request comes in, that you don't have to turn that data over before you can notify an individual to let them know that this is occurring. So the first thing is the data from the UK would be in the UK. So number one, it stays in the UK if that's where it's filtering through, if that's the way that you're set up with Relativity 1. So no, we wouldn't hand over to US government. Second one is that if we were to have any kind of a request or a subpoena, that the ideal would be that you have bring your own key, right? So we're moving in that direction now and setting that up so that you have your own ability to control and manage your own key would be ideal as well, that you'll be able to just revoke access with that data. So for whatever reason that you determine you want to revoke that access, it would be removed. But original question, your data would stay local to the UK.
I think one thing we were talking about earlier on is obviously we've talked around cloud today, some of the benefits, some of the challenges that have been faced. We'd be very keen to get some general questions and general feedback from the audience in terms of your level of cloud adoption, and is there anything that is stopping you moving towards a cloud model today?
Probably trust, right? Is everybody struggle with the same concept in their own companies? No one trusts the cloud? Or everybody does. It should be okay then. Everybody seems like they trust.
Nobody trusts the security guys.
It's just
and
the
go.
security people. I know, I know. It is true. Well, I think that one of the things we would mention is in the months to come, we're only going to be doing more and more to allow people to control that security. So we mentioned BYOK. We're also going to be focusing on more of the user behavior analytics side of things to try to ensure that people who have a cloud instance, if people are doing something, if they're doing something that looks outside the norm, it's our ability to look at it and say, okay, well, that person doesn't normally log in for that long. It's outside of a standard deviation of 4. What are they doing? So really trying to get to a point of building out that user behavior analytics side of things, which I think is a pretty cool offering to kind of couple over the cloud instance. And on top of that, a lot of automation that we're going to be focusing on. And I always like the human element of security because you can automate 90% of things and do wonders with all the machine learning and AI and all the other buzzwords that we have in security. But at the end of the day, you have to have an analyst and you have to have a trained team of analysts and SMEs who can dig into things to look for things. So we'll only be building that out more.
And something, if I may add to that as well, is whilst, I lead security for Moray Global, I've got a team that supports me. One thing that I think is relevant for everybody is that we all have a key responsibility to play to make sure that our infrastructure, our systems, and our data are secure. Mm-hmm. Our teams can't be in every location, every minute of every day. It has to be a combined effort. And that's whether it's an on-premise or whether it's a cloud solution. It's got to be a team effort to deliver strong, effective security.
Yeah, I think that that's where the strength come from in any partnership, is knowing that you guys have the same goals in mind,
Yeah.
the same commitment to the level of security that needs to be in place with something like this. Wow. Do we have any other questions before we close out? Hey, well, I'm glad I found you on the street. Thank
Me too.
you. Thank you for joining, and I appreciate you walking through some of this with us.
That's a pleasure.
Thank you very much.